Join us for a special early morning walk through a permanent pasture surrounded by multi-species graziers, donkeys, cows, sheep, goats, and of course some guard dogs, which means a lot of pleasant and present background sounds. We are in the hills between Rome and Florence in Italy and have the great pleasure to visit the farm of Marco and Chiara. Marco takes us on a morning walk to feel, smell and see regeneration of permanent pastures in a Mediterranean landscape. Definitely not easy, but also definitely possible. And yes, you can do this profitably. How does Marco, who had no farming experience 20 years ago, approach regeneration? And how does he approach it now when they take on new lands? What are the first steps and how much has he learned over the last 20 years? What is the role of animals in regenerating the Mediterranean landscape? And what about the challenging balance between running a company and thus needing to break even and wanting to regenerate as fast as possible? Plus, we discussed the challenge of feed. Is it okay to bring the feed for your non-ruminants in your rotation from outside your farm when your soils can't sustain the needy plants like wheat and barley yet? And if yes, how do you deal with the challenges of competing potentially for human food? As always, we only scratch the surface because it's impossible to capture 20 years of deep regeneration in 1 hour. But we tried, and I hope you enjoy listening to it as much as we did recording it. This is the Investing in Regenerative Agriculture and Food podcast, Investing as if the planet mattered, where we talk to the pioneers in the regenerative food and agriculture space to learn more on how to put our money to work to regenerate soil, people, local communities, and ecosystems while making an appropriate and fair return. Why my focus on soil and regeneration? Because so many of the pressing issues we face today have their roots in how we treat our land and our sea, grow our food, what we eat, where and consume. And it's time that we as investors, big and small, and consumers start paying much more attention to the dirt/soil underneath our feet. To make it easy for fans to support our work, we launched our membership community, and so many of you have joined us as a member. Thank you. If our work created value for you, and if you have the means, and only if you have the means, consider joining us. Find out more on gumroad.com/investinginregenag. That is gumroad.com/investinginregenag, or find the link below. Welcome to a very special episode. We're doing a morning walk, not so early, and you're gonna hear a bit of background noise, but in a good way. Some dogs, a lot of animals. We're gonna talk about animals on the land. We're here in, I would say, central Italy, northern Lazio, if you're familiar, close to Tuscany. And we're in a beautiful landscape. It's the end of September, the end of the summer. It's getting fresher. And we're here with Marco, who's going to give us
hello, everybody.
A tour on this land, or a little morning walk and a discussion on the role of animals in regeneration, which is always a hot topic. And there are some animals greeting us, which are the important guard dogs. They have a role in regeneration as well.
Absolutely.
Fundamental in these kind of landscapes to not lose animals. So Marco, first of all, where do we find ourselves in terms of landscape? We're going to make it as visual as possible, obviously, because people are listening when they're driving or they're cooking, or they might be gardening, with many people do that, or painting someone as well. So we're going to describe where we find is what we see around. But how many hectares do you farm? How long have you been here? Just to give a bit of an intro, so people know where we are and who you are.
Welcome everybody. We are at Pulicaro Farm. That is a farm of 100 hectares, 60 hectares that we own, and another 40 that we rent for farming. We are on the Altopiano dell'Alfina. Is a plateau, a volcanic plateau close by Bolsena Lake. It's 600 meters on the sea level, volcano soil, and in a quite wild area. This plateau is surrounded from woods, forests, natural reserves, and very, very few people living here. There are probably more dogs in Pulicaro than people living in the
Which is
2 square
interesting
miles
because
around.
you're not that far from Florence. You're not that far from Rome. Like it's all
No.
2 hours
No,
max.
from
Even
Rome
for,
is even less. It's 1 hour and a half. From Florence is a couple of hours. Yes.
and it's remote. Like it's um, empty in that sense and full of life in terms of, but not
Yes.
full of people. Why? Was it always the case, or why has that happened?
I think that historically this was an area that was more populated during the Etruscan age. There was more farms. We were seeing maps from the archaeologists than now. And I think the reason is because it was on the edge. Alfina means on the border, literally. So when something is very far from the center of Lazio and very far from the center of Tuscany, is not Tuscany, is not Lazio, is something that people tend to forget. So I think this is the main reason.
It didn't depend on anybody. It wasn't part of anything really. So
Probably
Yeah,
yes, was a place that was not well considered, well developed from the main governments of the 2 regions. We are at the border of 3 regions: Umbria, Lazio, and Tuscany.
to make it even more complicated.
Exactly. But now there is a good side effect of this after probably hundreds of years, that the natural environment is very well preserved, and that honestly there is a very high quality of air, water, and lifestyle.
Which is not to be taken lightly in many places.
No,
where
absolutely.
Many other places in the world you don't have that problems with water quality, air quality, basically lack of life. And then how did you end up here and started farming? It's almost 20 years. Like I think in May, it's 19 and a half. Like
No, it's now more than
more than
20, because it was 20 year the last May.
So 20 and a half years.
Yeah, 20 and a half.
Because you weren't born on a farm here, you weren't Generation X in a long lineage.
No. Me and Chiara, my wife, we started here right after university. I studied ecology, natural science ecology, and my wife studied archaeology. And we were initially looking for a place to live that could also sustain us in economical, from an economical point of view. So not just an homestead, but trying to find a way for having a productive farm.
Why was that? Because I think many
Other
in
places.
that movement, many other places, many other people somehow go for that, like go for the homestead, like when a back to the land movement. There have been many waves. I think we're part in another one at the moment. The idyllic, if I just grow my own vegetables, everything will be fine. I'm generalizing here. But why was it for you from the beginning immediately, like this has to make economic sense as well?
Because honestly, I didn't want to do another job. You know what I mean?
Fair point. Yeah, farm job. Yeah.
Exactly. I love this job that is as well a lifestyle. Obviously, there are two.
By the way, it's amazing to see the guard dog eating part of the food of the cow and scaring away the cow. And complaining about it as well. Yeah.
This is classical jealousy of young dogs. He is big, but he is 1 year and a few months old. And so he doesn't know exactly which is his own role. It's like, teenagers. And so he wanna...
Definitely not eating the food of the ruminants, but he will find out.
Yes.
So you didn't want to be off farm, and so when you came on this piece of land, what was the decision? Like, how was the process to decide what to grow and what to go for?
I always been interested in I think the right word is in ecosystems. I mean, I've always been interested in plants, but also in animals. And probably the things that intrigue me more is the cooperation in between animals and plants. So it was quite natural for us deciding to have, small vegetable garden, planting olives. We planted 2,000 olives in 10 years. Planting some heirloom varieties of fruit trees, but also having animals. Also because for me it was almost always quite clear that could not be an easy and fast regeneration process, especially in Mediterranean climate, without the animals. But in general, from my point of view as an ecologist, there's no natural environments that doesn't count on the activities of animals, no matter where, no matter what. But is trying to have a farm that is as far as possible from artificial environment, we need the animals for imitate, is the right word?
Yeah, to imitate the
imitate natural processes as much as possible.
And you mentioned to regenerate, we need the animals. So that means that this land, even though it's been not heavily farmed or heavily, let's say, quote unquote, developed over, like, it needs regeneration, or it's in, like, when you came on the land, what was your reading of the land as an ecologist? What was your...
Yes.
Like, there are many forests around, but like, what was your impression of what is this landscape?
For sure, I was quite lucky here, and lucky, I mean, I chose this area also because there was a lot of forest, because it was quite high, so less polluted as the plains. And I was very happy to check that there was no heavy chemicals in the soil, so the situation was not so bad, okay? But at the same time, I think that people sometimes have a very vague idea of what is a fertile soil, what is a healthy environment, a resilient environment. And even just cutting the grass year by year, the same day of the year mostly, and without putting back anything in the soil, reducing so the biodiversity in terms of seed production, or cultivating cereals in a not correct way, allowing erosion and so on, it's enough for reducing heavily.
If you do that 50, 60, 100 years,
exactly,
you mine
1%
a year still.
So here, for example, just for using one parameter that is not the only one, but can be easy to read, is the amount of organic matter. Here was around 1.5, 1.8. That was not so bad compared to other areas, but absolutely not sufficient for
healthy pastures,
but also for producing, really, because this is then at the end the matter of farming. Farming must produce something to eat.
It's your asset.
Okay.
The soil organic matter, I mean, I'm definitely no expert, but it seems a good proxy. If it's too low, you're just not going to produce a lot, because it's sort of the currency in the system. It has to flow.
Exactly.
And so, okay, you found it with that, but you've also found it with good conditions, or at least non very bad conditions, in terms of chemicals, in terms of pollution. Then what was your first step? Where did you start your journey? Because you were fresh out of university, you didn't have a lot of farming experience.
Absolutely. And especially 20 years ago, it was not even easy to find other examples, to find people that could explain something to you.
Remember people before the internet,
Yes, almost average agronomist was just suggesting you very classical solution.
Has that changed a lot?
Not a lot, but it changed. It changed. I mean, now someone that want to start something like this, have good example, bad example, have books, have a podcast, have a lot of
YouTube
information that you can at least check and make your own idea. Here we started, and mostly we have to make mistakes under our mistakes to understanding what was the right combination, the right solution, you know.
And so, fast forward 20 years, or we're going to go into different spaces. Well, what do we see now? How much do you manage?
You can see under
what
your
kind
feet,
of different enterprises and animals do you have?
What changed in 20 years is that we increased a lot the number and the diversity of the animals, that we expanded the farm from the original 3 hectares to almost 100, and that now, finally, in the plots we started cultivating, the one that was more close to the house, the first 3 hectares, let's say, now there are almost probably 18 years that we are acting quite consciously in a regenerative way, maybe 15, because at the beginning you try to do your best, you avoid chemicals, you try to use organic fertilizers, you try to do it, but you're not understanding exactly what's going on, and you cannot see the result before at least a couple of seasons, so understanding.
Somebody else said on the podcast recently, if I could change one thing, it would be that farming had a season every week, so you could change, you could actually adjust.
Makes sense. Honestly, is really difficult to realize the result of your actions.
Because you don't know if it was the weather, if it was the
I really remember the sensation for the first 5 years, the really terrible sensation of not understanding what was surrounding you. Not completely, but you were feeling a big lack of information in some area. So was very disturbing, obviously.
You feel like things are moving, but you have no clue, like it's sort of in the dark.
Exactly.
And now has that changed?
It's completely. And
so you observe pastures, you see, to a certain degree, of course, what is driving them, what is moving, not moving, how.
Absolutely. After 15 years, 20 in the farm and 15 in regenerative agriculture, I feel that there is a long path in front of us still, okay, but I think that now I know how to navigate. I really feel that my actions give me the result that more or less I expect, okay? What the things I can really see more now is in the global health of the ecosystems, on the resilience of the ecosystems. Just for making a very silly example, but even the dogs now don't need pet insecticides anymore. It's very rare that a dog have fleas or ticks, okay? More than one, you know what I mean? Cause rotating birds, rotating other animals, having wild birds and so on,
eat them, basically.
Yes, keep the things under control, okay? Now this was a silly example, but obviously
but it's an example of, the same example of, Richard Perkins, like if you see healthy predators operating on your farm, it means you're reaching because they can choose. They will fly somewhere else mainly, or they walk somewhere else. And so now, like with new fields or new places, because you've been growing steadily, of course the dog that was joining us now is going to annoy the cows again. It's the same young one we discussed before. And is still eating the the ruminant food. Barley.
He's a
amazing.
Barley dog.
But, so like with new fields you took on recently, how are you operating differently? Like things you started managing the last few years, like how big is the difference compared to 10 years ago or 15 years ago?
You are referring to the results I see?
No, the operation.
The
like
operation.
Like now, because you said now I feel more, not in control, but more, I know more when I do X, probably Y will come.
Exactly.
In a certain and the first few years I had absolutely no idea. And I felt it as well, because I was trying things and actually didn't see too many connections. Like now with new, heavily degraded fields, what do you do? What's your approach when you move in or when you start leasing or buying something?
My approach now is when I have to start the regeneration process on a plot, because I still don't use the 100% of the farm. Okay, I'm still colonizing the most far part of the farm.
Like your farm is between Rome and Tuscany, lately.
No.
Yeah. The most far pieces. Just like your farm is one of the far pieces between.
Exactly.
Between Florence and Rome, you're like it's easier closer to the farm, obviously.
Obviously.
So you're still, and when you colonize, let's use a difficult word.
Yes, but it's just for, to colonize with biodiversity. This is what I mean.
I like it.
The first thing I do is that I take time for really observing this new plot, because every single piece is slightly different from the other.
How do you do that? How do you take time? Do you take a chair and sit? Do you walk?
No, I walk. I walk constantly. I walk for hours sometimes.
Do you note anything down? If you have a notebook, do you take any observations? Do you take audio? How do you...
I take photos usually. I take photos and I take few notes on the photos. But because the most important thing for me is trying to make a big picture. I don't take so much notes of single stuff, but I try to look at bioindicators in terms of plants, in terms of soils, in terms of water. And I try to imagine which animal can be introduced in this new plot that will have the best effect on the soil, at the same time will be enough productive on that plot, because this is something that people forget quite usually, that when you start a regeneration of the soil, the animals are useful, but at the same time they should need a already regenerated environment, so they will suffer on a place that is not fully regenerated.
There's not enough pasture, not the right species to make them grow. And at the end, you're running a company and you need to sell the protein, the animals. Yeah.
So, according on the specific situation, probably I will use as first some goats, okay? Then I will introduce some sheep. Then I will introduce probably some birds. Then probably I will remove the goats. And I will add, after a couple of years of birds, I will add the cow.
Which is the heaviest or like the most impactful, but needs the most probably, the cow in terms of...
The cow are the most effective in terms of regeneration, but at the same time are the ones that are more needy. They need a regenerated pasture for express their potential. The calf you see in front, okay, the gray one, okay, have the same age of the brown one, and
significantly bigger, just for the audience.
Okay, it's not a matter. It's not a matter of breed, because in theory the red breed is a little bit bigger. Okay, but the point is that this calf had access with the mother to pastures that were well regenerated.
Wow.
So the mother produced a bunch of milk. Okay, and she's fatty. She is chubby, you know. Okay,
so it's a dance between production, yield, which animal, which species, and then see
how to use the animal.
And that process of observing, do you do that? I'm imagining not only before you take on a new pasture or a new field, you also do that
constantly,
like because you have to adapt, because it's not the plan you had in your mind.
Absolutely. Even if I have to tell you that, honestly, I feel that it's much easier when the soil is regenerated. When the soil is regenerated, no matter what you put on, it will be much easier to get the result, and will be much more difficult to damage it. It's at the beginning that if you make the wrong choices, you will lose money, lose time, and also even get the soil and ecosystemic condition worse.
Which means you lose even more time
and more money and so on.
You go down the cycle instead of up.
For example, we try to use every single animal on a purpose. We have also donkeys. That for donkeys, we don't sell meat, we don't sell anything. They are donkeys that we mostly use for regenerating processes, because they are animals that will eat just the things that cow, goats, and sheep doesn't eat.
Okay. Shout out for donkeys, they're amazing. Yeah.
Okay. Or we use pigs. We have 200 pigs in woods and pastures that we use as I don't know how to say. They have a double. There are two big families in animals. There are herbivores and omnivores. Okay, omnivores are very useful because you can feed them on pasture, even if the pasture is not feeding enough them. You know what I mean? And pigs, for example, have a very specific action on the soil that is disturbing
rooting and
with
their
the surface. That is very delicate, but if you use them properly, they're amazing at the early stages of regeneration. Then, when the regeneration is, let's say, again, is more far in the process, cows are excellent. Okay.
So what do you feed the pigs then? Like, what do you feed the omnivores? How do you deal with the feed part, not like the ones that are not able? I mean, we discussed barley and the dogs, but like, how do you operate, or how do you approach that thorny subject, the difficult subject of feed? Because you don't want to bring in a lot of feed from outside to regenerate your pastures to keep the animals alive, because that would be counterintuitive.
This is a very delicate point, okay? Unfortunately, nothing comes from nothing. So, in the difficult target to balance a company with a study case, okay, with just the theory and the studies about regeneration, we made some choices. To ask neighbors to use their own field for pasture is almost impossible, because I have to cross roads, I have to maybe move a couple of kilometers and so on. And I decided to keep our land for pastures. This means that we can produce hay, that we can produce some barley sometimes, but the most part of the land we use is for permanent grasslands. Okay. You have also to consider that we have more or less 40 hectares that are forest, woods. Okay. And we decided to buy the cereals and legumes we need from the same neighbors. We try to buy not more far than 30 kilometers, more or less 40 kilometers. We buy mostly from Tuscany, few people in Tuscany, and people around here, very close, and someone from Umbria. Because honestly, this is my personal point of view, but I think it's something quite important. A lot of people think that you can start regeneration process and at the same time producing cereals. I think this is false, because it's extremely difficult. The cereals are needy species, needy crops. So I will produce cereals, but when I can reach a certain amount of organic matter in the soil, biodiversity, dynamics, speed of dynamics into the soil, and so on.
So you see a future where you also integrate the cereals somewhere, but from very pragmatic and practical reasons, you chose not to do that yet because the land is not ready.
Yes, and also because I know that I cannot ask my chickens to take the bus for going pasture somewhere else. You know what I mean? So the main goal for me is having the animals from pasture, because they are needed for regeneration of the soil. So if I have to make a choice, this is my choice.
And chickens are great for regeneration, but they don't. I mean, they eat a lot of insects, but they need grain and cereals. There's no question, unless you have a few in your backyard, etc. But if you produce them, it's a myth you can do that without, and which means you have to buy it. And I think the same Richard Perkins mentioned as well somewhere. Like, is he extremely happy with buying organic cereal somewhere else to feed his chicken? Not really, but as long as they are willing to sell it to him, and he can use it to regenerate his soils, and slowly get up to maybe other animals, but we are used to eat chicken and eggs, which means there's cereals in the game. Like, there's not a lot to do about it.
Yes, there is a very wide gradient in this. I want to make you a few examples. First of all, more the pasture is rich, less cereals they need. More.
Do you see that every time?
Absolutely. It's seasonal. They decrease even the 40% of the need. Okay. then less is the density of the animals, less cereals you need, obviously. Then it depends on which cereals you're using. We just use the one that's called autunno vernini, autumn and winter cereals and legumes, means barley, spelt, wheat, oat, and fava beans and peas. We don't use soy, we don't use corn, okay, because they need much more water, and because we don't find locally. Okay, so we don't have the control.
And do you send anything back? Like, it's very difficult for you to send the manure probably back to the farms you're buying from. Like, it's not that's like you're bringing
giving them meat.
Manure. Sorry, of the
manure is a little bit more difficult, but it happens with the very close neighbors. We do this, okay. We do this. And another thing that I want to tell you is that from a global point of view, we need cereals as humans. So I don't want to, let me say, waste a lot of cereals for the birds or for the pigs. This is why I took agreement with a big cooperation of farmers, organic farmers in Tuscany, that they give me just the, let me say, scraps. I mean, the barley or the spelt that got broken in small pieces. The part that is sorted by the machine that have a lot of wild little seeds inside, that is just amino acid diversity for my chickens. Okay.
So you take the quote unquote leftovers.
Exactly, that people usually use for biogas sometimes. Okay.
So in the scale of usefulness and actually the scale of protein, because you can have a discussion, like biogas is the absolute last one.
Exactly.
And energetically, we can ask a lot of questions about the efficiency, the subsidies needed, etc. On a small scale, biogas probably makes sense, but the large ones we've been building
completely.
Doesn't make any sense because you have to drag around a lot of material, which is very water heavy, to far away places.
Exactly.
If fuel wasn't so cheap, this wouldn't happen. So it's better to transfer it into animal protein, which is very high quality, very high sought after. We're not going to finish eating that anytime soon, and it's actually a few steps up the protein ladder. And was it difficult to convince them of are you able to pay better or at least equal? Are they happy that it goes to animals instead of a biogas facility or this
I pay a little bit more.
Yeah.
I pay a little bit more, and consider that this is human quality
food
or organic food. So yes, for my animals is the best. It's simply to change the mindset and knowing that you have to balance your ratio more frequent, because you will have more spelt, then you will have more barley.
Do you do that, or it comes to you in big quantities and you mix?
I mix and I grind, okay, because I want to have the control, okay.
Which is extra complexity. It's something else you need to learn.
Absolutely. At the same time, at the very beginning, every time you change the ratio to your animals, even if I try to change it smoothly, okay, but for example, at a certain point I have just mostly spelt, okay.
Good luck with the smooth,
Okay, and the beginning of the regeneration process, I mean, 10, 15 years ago, was much more stressful for the animals. Now, more pasture means less food, so you already balance this. And the things that I noticed and I studied also is that more your soil increase in terms of biodiversity and quality means that more the microbiota of the soil develop. And the microbiota of the soil is directly connected to the microbiota of the animals that lives on that soil, that will help him to digest things that are theoretically not considered good. I'm going to make an example. Pigs officially doesn't produce any phytase. That is an enzyme that breaks down the vegetables, mostly for making it easy. But we have seen that rural pigs have genetically a longer intestine, first of all, okay? And second, they have bacteria that help them to produce phytase.
So the official, it's funny that first of all you said rural pigs, which suggests urban. Obviously the ones inside are urban, even though they are not enjoying anything of the city life. But it's interesting, so you literally, of course, grow with your surroundings and are able to,
This
the
is
same
point.
with all the, I remember Fred Provenza on the show, and of course the book, Nourishment. Definitely read it if you haven't, any listeners, of him observing, I think it was goats eating something that officially was poisonous to them, and then he did the analysis, luckily, instead of freaking out and say and make sure they didn't eat it anymore, because at that specific moment in the life cycle of that plant, it was actually very beneficial to the goats. And the goat knew they would never eat something, or never, I mean, a rural goat would never eat anything that would harm them, and apparently the pigs, so they eat the vegetable leftovers, so they eat, because they can actually...
This is all mediated by the microbiota. So this is something that people forget.
So it's getting easier.
Exactly.
Finally a story that's getting easier.
Developing your soil is developing the microbiota of your animals. That means that develop the resistance and the adaptability and the efficiency, the conversion rate of your animals. Okay? Look at the lamb and the goats. I mean, they are quite chubby. They are having...
After the summer, which is not
after the summer, that was quite hard, quite
was
harsh.
A very hot one, as the last ones have been.
Exactly. And some hay, and in terms of cereal, they have a handful, just for keeping them trained on coming when I whistle, and little things like this, okay?
And now, like this field, where would they go next?
If you want to take a walk, you will see that here...
I see a lot of mushrooms already, which is amazing.
Yes, there are really a lot of mushrooms. This is a good sign. There are a lot of the kind of beetles that roll the
yeah, the dung beetles.
Okay.
The heroes of any regeneration.
Absolutely. There are a lot of ants. My thesis when I was at university was studying the ants community in olive orchards, for using them as bioindicators of the rate of soil disturbance. Okay.
Which I can imagine in a...
Sorry?
Yeah, I see a dung beetle here. Big too.
This is the bull.
I was thinking, there's another... It sounds like a donkey almost.
No, it's the
donkey
bull.
Is offended
He is a
now.
donkey in certain way, but it's the bull.
But I was thinking it comes from the wrong side. This is not a donkey.
If you walk here with me, you really see under your feet in terms of softness that we are going down in decreasing of fertility. Up there is much better, down there is much less. Why? Because here is just 3 years that I'm regenerating, and they spend part of the time, a good part of the time, where they have the water.
Yeah, closer to the water part.
So I should make fences even smaller for improving the regeneration. So the rotational system is excellent, but needs time to build all the infrastructures and so on.
Is that the biggest? Wow, there are a lot of dung beetles.
A lot.
Of course, now I see them and I cannot unsee them anymore. Is that a big piece, like a big... I see a lot of 3-point wire or 3-wire systems with a simple stalk. Like, is that a big, not limiting factor as well, but a big piece, like to get all that infrastructure up?
Yes, I mean, it's very convenient compared to metal ones. Okay, much easier, much flexible, much cheaper. Okay. But at the same time, I mean, for using 50, 60, 80 hectares, it is
piece by piece,
something to do.
But you would like to make them even smaller.
Even smaller. The key, obviously, is, it's not up to me to say, but the key is having fast rotation on small plots with quite a good numbers of animals. This is the optimum, okay?
For
having longer periods of
rest.
Full of beetles everywhere. Okay. And here you can see that this was an abandoned soil from years, okay? And you see the muschio, this
sort of moss.
Moss, it's a moss. Okay, that means that here the soil have not enough dynamics in terms of vertical movement of water, nutrients and gases, okay? This is why
So moss is a signal that it's
quite locked, the soil, okay?
Because plants cannot get through, they cannot reach nutrients they need.
Exactly. So here you have two options. You can eventually mechanically disturb the surface. That is something I try to avoid because, it's gasoline, it's time, and I think it's not strictly needed. Can be useful, but it's not strictly needed. When I say moving the soil, I mean 1 inch. Okay.
Because that's the issue, like you see here, like it's the first layer.
Yes, but you have seen that
Yeah,
up
yeah,
there
there's no moss. No,
okay,
no.
so it's
walked-
enough to move the water and the hay ball during the winter and summer, and to fence more probably that the organic matter will improve, and automatically the moss will reduce, because it's not a problem to having a moss, but the problem is that when you have a lot of moss and a lot of couple other species, it's clear that you have less biodiversity. So this is the point. There's nothing against the moss, but it's just a signal.
It's a signal. It's a
signal that the productivity is less, and you have seen that there is 15 centimeters of grass, and here there are 3 centimeters. It's very clear.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is.
And then, like an insight like this in this field, you bring that back to your. You when you map the grazing plan, you say, okay, actually, these fields, like, how do you sit down and plan in such a complex dance of animals and feed and
you have to
water points and where's electricity and how, okay, what do we do with the donkeys and how do you keep that complexity?
Being very humble, first of all, and trying to apply schemes, knowing that every maybe 4 weeks you should even reconsider that scheme. Okay?
Do you have like a giant map in your office? Like, how do you?
I have the map, and I use also quite often I use Google Earth with the previous photo of the year for also looking at
amazing remote sensing capabilities.
Exactly. Then I go walking, obviously, I go checking. And I now have patterns that I can use. For example, on grasslands, the best option is to introducing a small group of goats that will reduce maybe brambles or thorns or thistles. They love it. Okay. Then introducing the sheep. Then introducing the cow. Last one, the donkeys. This is a general pattern that works quite well. If you don't need, at the beginning, an extra nitrogen input.
Which means that the birds.
The birds and the pigs. Obviously, after the herbivores, it's excellent to have the birds.
Because of the dung beetles and all the...
For everything. And it's incredible how much they increase the number of eggs. After 3-4 days, they are entering an area where herbivores have been, okay? They increase the laying of eggs about 20-25%.
Wow.
Okay.
Because of the influx of insects.
Yes, everything probably.
Amazing.
But here we should open maybe shortly another chapter. Policies, rules, official vets, and so on. So if you tell at the moment, for example, where people are struggling officially wide world with avian influence, you will tell that you will introduce birds close to cows, they go crazy.
Because now the bird flu is scaring everyone and...
See, but it's scaring everyone because no one want to study really about this, and no one want to accept the fact that it's a very vulnerable virus considering sunlight and temperatures and wind, and because no one want to consider densities. The mainstream approach is that hygiene equals sterility. Okay,
and
this is fake.
And the real is more diversity equals like It's not the moss that's the enemy, but it's the quantity of moss. If the moss is reduced significantly, it's not an issue.
Exactly.
If like with the dog that joined us again, doesn't need any flea medicine or poison, etc., because he lives in a very, very alive.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's gonna take a while to battle that. But it's an issue everywhere. Like lock them up inside because then they're fine. Make sure you go in sterile as a farmer. And you're saying, yeah, but actually in a healthy natural environment could still happen, but it's way less likely to cause any issues. But of course, yeah, if you say let's put them all together and now we have cows that are getting sick, like people freak out. Like
exactly. But the problem is that we look always for simple answer to complex questions. So what I'm saying is not that you have to put everyone together in a mass, in a mud, you know.
And hope.
I'm saying that I will try to do exactly what happens in natural environments. So different steps, separated, organized, checked from the vets, from the labs, you know, it's something completely different. It's a more complex approach that produces an easier and safer way to produce healthy, hygienic food. That doesn't mean sterile food.
And do you see? No, it means food full of life, as some friends of the podcast like to call. And do you see that way of thinking and seeing? I mean, it's a big battle and conversation and narrative we're obviously in a sterile world, and we try to make it more sterile with children, with COVID, with et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we see that it's not working, but it's also like even questioning that and putting that on the table is very difficult. Do you see that with vets here? Like how is with policy that they're starting to get interested in because results? I mean, you have a very successful farm. You sell in many interesting places in Rome. You're very, very happy customers, very little sick in a way that officially, according to the rule book, shouldn't really work because it's messy, but it's organized, it's structured, it's following nature. You see, how is your relationship with the policy side or with the vets, etc.? Do you have some friends at the vets or it's a constant battle?
No, absolutely. Obviously, there are technicians, let's call them, people that are
engineers
or agronomists or whatever that have a very classical approach. They don't want to have a single doubt in their life, and so it's quite easy to have a conversation with. But there are always people that are different. So I know a lot of excellent vets that helps farm like mine, like my vet, for example, Francesca Pisseri. She's an agroecologist, mostly more than a vet, okay? And
so she's happy when she comes here and like
absolutely.
Fine.
I hope, but it seems yes. Or that there are a lot of others in Italy that are constantly fighting and risking
their career,
of course, career for producing a result in terms of a new approach. Okay, we are in touch with AIDA, that is the Italian Association of Agroecology, that involves also professors.
I thought about an opera in Verona, but no, that's not that. Aida. No, I'm joking. No. I'm making a very joke.
It's another I
tried to make an opera joke. People
opera,
don't.
And we wrote down a document that we are trying to share with other vets, official vets, about the One Health approach and the microbiota. That there's no healthy humans where when our animals are sick, and there's no healthy animals if the environment is sick. There's nothing to add about it. This is the true and dot. You know what I mean? Okay.
But it's a constant. Yeah, I can imagine the. But is that changing? Like, have you seen? Because you've been here and in this space for 20 years. Is there movement on like the amount of people visiting here as well? What have you seen there?
Yes, I mean there is a bigger interest about this. This for sure. This is changing. Still small numbers, but if 20 years ago was 0.00 when it's zero, okay, now maybe it's the 2, 5, 6%. Okay, this is much more.
Which is a huge growth if you consider.
Huge growth. It's still little, but it's a huge growth.
It's not a tipping point yet. We need to get to 15. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I agree. And then there is another thing that is changing, that even the people that are more skeptical about this, that doesn't trust this complexity, they are starting doubting for a simple reason. The other way of producing food is collapsing.
Doc, I'm sorry, I don't have anything to eat for you.
They come sometimes for trying to understand, because even from an economical point of view, their productivity, their margins decreased a lot. So especially after Ukraine war, people discovered that you cannot pay fertilizer 150 or 120 or 90 euros per 100 kilogram. That's not sustainable even economically. That if your wheat doesn't produce at least 6 tons per hectare, you will not pay all the expenses, the big tractor and so on. So this double reason. People that were always been a little bit interested, that are becoming more, and people that are not, that are skeptical about this, but they are started doubting about what they're doing.
Do you get neighbors asking, or neighbors, like people in the area? You already mentioned there are not so many in general, but like other farmers, increase of questions, knock on the door, like...
There are,
Marco,
obviously.
What are you doing? Marco and Chiara, what are you doing differently?
Someone, maybe not exactly from the strict neighborhood, but even sometimes also from the strict neighborhood, sometimes more from a little bit more far. And obviously there is a gap of communication, that is the gap of communication that impact all regenerative agriculture, that is the time scale.
You mean the speed of regeneration, or?
The speed of regeneration, the speed of the economical result. That is a matter that no one can avoid.
No.
But if you are used to speak with people that say, okay, so I will buy a farm and in 5 years I wanna, in 2 years I wanna break even, and in 5 years I wanna buy the new tractor.
Yeah, but
this is a problem,
understand. You know, I talked to many of those, but I always answer with, like, what did you do when you invested in solar energy or like even nuclear? Like, it takes, many of these things take a long time. In solar, we're perfectly fine with payback times of 8, 9, 10 years, and then the panels are fine for another 20, and we're happy about it because it's long term, like your money is parked and does interesting things. And then when it comes to farming, we're suddenly like, oh, it needs to be super fast, and like we're fine in other industries. If you invest in in infrastructure, water cleaning for a city or sewage, is like, that's extreme long term with also risks and low returns, but interesting returns, not really correlated to the rest of the world, because we always need sewage, I mean, for the time being. And then with farming, we're like, oh yeah, but it needs to be fast. And like, yeah, but we deal with 15, 20-year things all the time.
And honestly,
it's not a VC investment. Like, it's not venture capital. It's not software as a service.
But I want to add something more, that from a strictly economical point of view, I think that regenerative agriculture is one of the few activities that will not absolutely cut your capital. I mean, every single dollar you put in the ground will be there.
Yeah.
So after the regeneration, then yes, in 5 years you can buy something new, you can have a very good result. The problem is that our agriculture system bankrupt in 80 years. So to me, it's already amazing that in 15 years you can have a very good result, and in 20 probably you can fully recover.
And fix a lot of things that have been mined and sold and made money off in the last. But I think that's also a notion or a piece, a theme that's very... Like, I still don't understand why people in Rome, in Milan, in Amsterdam, in London, like the financial places, don't fully grasp that. Like, you're rebuilding your asset, we're standing on it, it's getting better, we can see it, like we walked 150 meters from a place which was better, and now we're in a place that's worse. And if you move the fences and actually the sheep went in there, and like in a few years this is way better, which means the value of the land is better. Not that you want to sell, but if you had to, you could.
have a real value.
Yeah.
No matter what you want to do, you want to make
but
cereals, you can. You want to make...
Show me any other industry where your asset is getting better with management and you can sell what comes off it, in this case the animals.
Solar panels after 20, 25, 30 years, you have to rebuild completely.
Yeah, and the inverter you have to change after 10.
You know what I mean?
But it's because it's not like,
This is a self-replicating
But do you get more
value,
people,
you know?
like from the finance, not just this silly podcast, but from the finance world that visit here or that pass by? You have many guests as well. You run an agriturismo, people visit, people eat here. Highly recommended, by the way.
Thank you.
That they start asking questions and start thinking like, oh, but this actually makes, not easy, but makes a lot of economic sense as well.
Yes, but the problem is, again, that still the majority of people cannot even consider the idea of waiting.
Okay.
This is quite absurd, as you were telling me, but I really feel this still.
Okay,
Not all of them.
Yeah, no, but there's
Not all of them.
an impatientness.
Exactly.
And would that be like, if you would talk, we love asking this question. Let's imagine we're in a theater. We could do this in Verona, or a nice theater, La Scala in Milan or something, and we have the room full of the
With
financial...
my boots or not?
Absolutely.
With my boots.
And I would be more equipped with better boots as well. And we do this on stage. You share a lot of pictures, and we might have had a nice meal, of course, before, with a lot of food from the farm. And the room is full of investors, people that are managing maybe pension money, maybe other people's money, maybe their own. What would be your main message? Is that patience? Is that what would be, if you can plant one seed of regeneration in their mind that they remember for the next days when they go back to their desk, when they hopefully do something relevant? What would be the seed you want to plant in their mind?
Probably, if I should ask for a miracle, let's say, should be that suddenly all the fancy lights, music and sounds from advice that involve food production will fall down, and people can clearly see all the picture, where food comes from, which are the effects, with no judgment, with no, you know, but simply
full transparency.
Exactly. I imagine a world where the Milka cow is
not purple,
is not purple and is shooted into her stable and not on pasture with the grandpa. You know what I mean? This is the magic wand question, which is not a one. But what if you had to change one thing and you're in the supermarket and all the fancy advertisement, instead of that you could look through and basically see how the cacao is being grown, where the milk comes from and what kind of horrible circumstances that is, the sugar, the slavery, the chemicals, and then it's up to you to choose. Up to you. Without any kind again of
judgment. But it's like, if you want to support that, please do. And what it does to your body would be nice as well.
Probably, I mean, for coming back to your question, the seed I would like to plant is the awareness. We are distracted.
Specifically for people like in the financial world or entrepreneurs, people that are used to dealing with companies. What would be your message, or what would be your the seed you want to plant there to people? Because we talk a lot about the role of money in regeneration, and always asking that question to practitioners on the ground always makes me curious. Like, what would be your message if we bring a group here, even of people that are excited, interested, but they don't run farms, they don't have that knowledge? What would be a main message you want to give to them?
The main message should be, if you don't really think that we should move to Mars, we should start speak together. We should start taking all the good that is in the classical companies, in terms of knowledge, scientific approach, money, communication, everything, and start speaking with the other side So with people really proving that another way is possible and is productive. So honestly, I would like to ask them to come and stay for a week.
Yeah, not just a few hours. People come out.
No,
like,
a week.
Spend time.
A week.
You have to breathe, go for walks, observe, like you said before as well.
Exactly. And really testing, measurement. I mean, what I think we are missing is keeping these two realities together.
It's starting to happen, I have to say. Like since we started the podcast, and which is now almost 9 years ago, 8. And also before, since I've been following the regen space, I think one of the big shifts, apart from more attention and more media and blah blah, but is that other people from entrepreneurial backgrounds, investors, people that have built companies, etc., maybe in internet, etc., are starting to, maybe many cases through health crisis, they come to food and ag because of their health issues or in their family, and now starting to see there are actually entrepreneurial opportunities. These are long-term things, but they're actual very interesting things to do around regeneration at scale of soil, and they are starting to show up in the space slowly, like a few, but experienced people that know how to present to investors that want to do this as well, because many people, I'm imagining you as well, so that you want to go to Milan every other and wear a suit and speak your investor language. That's not what you want to do. You want to be here on the farm. You want to manage your land, and there are other roles for other people to play. Absolutely. And I see those people starting to come and starting to listen luckily to the podcast and reach out for help and introductions and things like that. But if we flip the question, if you would be an investor and we usually use a crazy number, which is €1 billion, which for reference is a 1 with 9 zeros, just to make it even more insane.
Big number.
Like a big number. What would you do if you had to put that to work? What would be I'm not asking for exact amounts, but I'm asking what would be your top priorities? What would be big buckets you put, I don't know, research genetics on cows, or buy a lot of land in this area, or invest in fencing technology? I don't know, what would be your big, or maybe a brand in Rome, or a series of restaurants, or what would be your focus if you had the crazy responsibility and burden of putting so much money to work?
I think that the things we need more is increasing the number of people involved in regenerative agriculture. Involved, no matter if they are lawyers, people from economics, vets, farmers, carpenter, or whatever. Okay, so if I could have this incredible opportunity, I probably will rent a team of people that will help me to scale a project, on probably national or regional level, I don't know, for starting, monitoring farms that can be considered a valuable example of productivity. You know what I mean? I mean, I would like to have a medium scale. I think that for land stewarding, to control, to protect the land, you should not have huge farms. I trust more little plots of land, like.
Because how can you walk it otherwise? Yeah.
Exactly. With a reasonable number of people that can be kept together very efficiently. But I need that this must be studied, monitored, controlled by people that are not farmers. Not just from people that are, but I need to involve them, you know what I mean? For proving that this system can be scalable, that this system can produce food, that the most common things people say, you cannot feed the world, okay? But I laugh on this, because for having this, for using this assumption, you should know at least the number of the equation. So how many people you have to feed? Yes, this we have the number, more or less, roughly. Then how much we should eat, and there's no an agreement about this.
What we should eat.
What we should eat, how much nutrient density we look for, and which are the lands that can produce food. Arable lands, what means? Almost nothing to me, because most part of Italy is not arable, but there is another, more or less roughly 25% of Italy is arable land, and there is at least another 25% that is not considered arable, but can be produced, it can be used for pasture, for pigs in the forest, for different varieties of cows or whatever. So I would like to show that we can feed the world properly, safely, and also, let's say, economically
Sound.
sound. Okay. Obviously, we have to tell this. We must be available to change our mindset. If we're approaching the food production of the world like we approach a new startup that should sell sneakers, this is a different game. That should be different rules, should be different, you know? So this is the point, probably. I would like to scale regenerative agriculture.
And by researching, following, observing, and publishing on that, sharing
involving
from
other
the biodiversity to the financial results and everything in between.
To the ecosystemic services, drinkable water or whatever. And
you would finance the research. You finance the observational tower, basically.
Exactly.
But on a different context, different scales, different, like, how does it look like here? How does it look like in the mountains of the Alps? How does it look like in the lowlands of the Po? How does it look like in the Netherlands, in Germany? How does it look like in Ghana? I mean, they're different contexts. Usually the approaches are very different, but the not the rules, but the let's say the mindset of the farmer is very similar.
Exactly.
I've been on many farms now, and it's very interesting how closely linked you might be to a pastoralist in Kenya compared to an arable farmer, industrial animal extractive animal farmer, arable farmer in Ferrara. It's interesting the language you speak. I want to thank you so much, Marco, for this short morning walk. I think others will follow, but it was a fascinating insight in the morning feed of the animals and the dog, which I didn't know liked barley. I don't know. He knows, or he will find out that it's probably not his cup of tea, but he will learn. It's a young animal. And beautiful surrounding and very interesting mini deep dive. We only scratch the surface, which I always say, in pasture regeneration and landscape regeneration. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. For the show notes and links we discussed in this episode, check out our website, investinginregenerativeagriculture.com/posts. If you like this episode, why not share it with a friend or give us a rating on Apple Podcasts? That really helps. Thanks again, and see you next time.